In the sleek metallic halls of the Zorian command ship, an air of smug superiority filled the atmosphere. The Zorians, an advanced alien species with smooth, glistening skin and eyes that shimmered with an unnatural intelligence, stood around their central command console. Their leader, Commander Vrask, regarded the holographic image of Earth with a disdainful sneer. "These humans are primitive," Vrask said, his voice dripping with confidence. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their greatest weakness? They rely on logic and predictability." One of his subordinates, a tall Zorian with nervous twitching limbs, shifted uneasily. "But the humans are known for their unpredictability, Commander. The Galactic Council has noted their resistance." Vrask waved a dismissive hand. "The Galactic Council is full of cowards. We are not dealing with military forces here. No. Our target is far more vulnerable. We will begin by infiltrating their rural settlements, small, isolated towns where the human military presence is non-existent." He pointed at the holographic map, zooming in on a small, peaceful town nestled in a valley. It was a picture-perfect representation of Earth's innocence, with tidy homes, a central playground, and children laughing in the streets. "This is where we'll begin. The adults will be busy with their meaningless tasks, oblivious to our presence. And the children? Harmless, ignorant little creatures, they'll never even know we're there." The Zorians smirked, their sharp teeth gleaming under the dim lighting. They activated their cloaking technology and descended toward the town, confident that their mission would be a quick and easy victory. The local playground was alive with the sound of children laughing and playing. Swings creaked as they swung back and forth, and kids chased each other with toy swords and water guns. It was a sunny afternoon, and the air smelled of freshly cut grass and adventure. In the center of the playground stood a group of kids who had just finished building an elaborate fort out of old tree branches and cardboard boxes. "I'm telling you, aliens are real," exclaimed a boy named Charlie, waving his plastic lightsaber in the air. He was about 10 years old, with messy brown hair and an imagination that knew no bounds. His best friend Sarah rolled her eyes but grinned. "Yeah, right, and they're going to land right here in our playground and ask us to show them around." Unbeknownst to the children, something very much like that was about to happen. High above, the Zorian scout ship hovered in the atmosphere, invisible to human detection. Commander Vrask and his team had chosen this very playground as their entry point. After all, what better place to begin than where the smallest, most insignificant humans congregated? The aliens deployed in groups, silently landing near the edges of the playground, their cloaking devices rendering them nearly invisible. The Zorians moved stealthily, scanning the area for signs of technology or danger, but all they saw were children playing with their primitive toys, laughing, unaware of the alien presence creeping closer. Vrask sneered as he watched the scene. "Look at them," he muttered, oblivious to the invasion happening right under their noses. As the Zorian squad approached, Charlie suddenly froze, sensing something strange in the air. His eyes narrowed and he turned to his friends. "Did you see that?" he whispered. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "See what?" "There was something there," Charlie said, pointing toward the jungle gym where a faint shimmer flickered in the sunlight. "Like a weird blur." Sarah laughed. "You're imagining things again. It's probably just heat waves or something." But Charlie wasn't convinced. He squinted at the shimmer. His curiosity piqued. Without thinking, he grabbed his water gun, a large, brightly colored toy, and aimed it at the strange distortion in the air. "What are you doing?" Sarah asked, half laughing, half exasperated. "Just testing a theory," Charlie replied with a grin. He squeezed the trigger and a stream of water shot out, arcing through the air and splashing directly onto the shimmer. To everyone's shock, the water didn't just splash harmlessly to the ground. It revealed the outline of an alien figure, flickering into visibility for a brief moment. The Zorian, caught completely off guard, yelped in a strange alien language as its cloaking field malfunctioned. The kids stared in wide-eyed disbelief. Charlie's mouth dropped open. "Whoa!" Sarah blinked, then burst into laughter. "Nice special effects. Where'd you get that costume?" The Zorian, its cover blown, tried to recover its composure, but the sight of these small, curious humans had clearly thrown the alien squad into disarray. The other children, noticing the bizarre sight, ran over to investigate, thinking it was part of some elaborate prank or a new VR game. One of the younger kids, armed with a toy sword, ran toward the now visible alien and tapped its leg. "Tag, you're it." The alien stumbled back, confused by the human child's behavior. Its squad mates, still cloaked, fumbled with their equipment, trying to figure out what had just gone wrong. Charlie, however, had already decided that whatever was happening, it was awesome. He squirted more water at the flickering alien, grinning from ear to ear. "This is the coolest thing ever. Do you guys think they're like alien robots or something?" The Zorian commander, observing from a distance, was mortified. His elite team of infiltrators, reduced to scrambling under the assault of Earth children armed with toys, it was an embarrassment unlike any other. "Pull back," Vrask growled into his comm device. "Regroup and prepare for a counterattack." As the Zorvians began to retreat, still flickering in and out of view, the kids chased after them, laughing and shouting. To them, this was just a game, and they had no idea that they had just thwarted the first phase of an alien invasion. The Zorvian squad retreated toward the far edge of the playground, their cloaking devices flickering in and out like faulty holograms. Commander Vrask growled in frustration as he watched his elite team being pursued by children no less, armed with nothing more than water guns, foam swords, and pure excitement. "Regroup!" Vrask barked into his comms. "Form a perimeter! We need to control this situation before it escalates." But to his utter dismay, the situation was already spiraling out of control. One of his soldiers had tripped over a jump rope left strewn across the grass by the children, and another had been cornered under the monkey bars, pelted by dodgeballs and water balloons from above. The Zorvians, with their superior intellect and advanced technology, were being utterly humiliated. Meanwhile, Charlie and his friends were having the time of their lives. "This is amazing," Sarah laughed, launching a frisbee at one of the aliens. The frisbee hit the Zorvian square in the chest, and the alien stumbled backward, visibly confused as to how this was happening. "They're like super advanced robots or something," Charlie grinned, spinning his plastic lightsaber in one hand. "Or maybe they're aliens, and we're the first humans they've ever seen." Another kid, Danny, who had been zooming around on his scooter, screeched to a halt next to them. "What are we gonna do? We need like a plan to beat them." Without missing a beat, Charlie raised his water gun high, rallying the other kids. "All right, listen up. We're gonna make a fort. We need to protect our playground from these robot aliens." The kids cheered, rallying behind Charlie's infectious enthusiasm. To them, this was just the latest, and by far the coolest game they had ever played. They scattered across the playground, gathering supplies, cardboard boxes, sticks, pool noodles, and anything else that could be used to build defenses. As the Zorvians tried to regroup, the children's fort began to take shape. They stacked crates and boxes into makeshift barricades, positioned water guns in strategic locations, and even rigged up a few tree branches as catapults for throwing water balloons. To the kids, it was a fun game, but to the Zorvians, it looked like pure chaos. Vrask watched in disbelief as the children continued to thwart every attempt his soldiers made to re-establish control. His squad was used to fighting disciplined military units, not wild, unpredictable human offspring. One of his soldiers, still soaked from the water gun ambush, reported in, his voice tinged with frustration. "Commander, these humans, they're impossible to predict. Their actions are random, and their primitive tools are interfering with our equipment." Vrask's eye twitched. "What do you mean, interfering?" The soldier gestured helplessly at his malfunctioning cloaking device. "The water. Somehow it's causing our tech to short-circuit." Vrask's mind raced. This wasn't just a matter of underestimating the humans. It was their children who were throwing his entire invasion plan into chaos. How could something so innocent be so disruptive? "Enough," Vrask snapped. "We will not be defeated by these children. Activate the containment field. Trap them inside." With a few quick commands, the Zorvians activated their advanced containment technology. A shimmering force field began to rise around the playground, enclosing the area in a bubble-like barrier. To Vrask, this would ensure their victory. The children would be trapped, and the Zorvians could complete their mission in peace. But, as always, the children had other ideas. Sarah was the first to notice the strange shimmer in the air as the containment field took shape. Guys, I think something's happening." Charlie, ever the leader, squinted at the force field. "Whoa, it's like some kind of energy shield. This just keeps getting better." The other kids were equally excited. To them, the alien force field wasn't a trap. It was the ultimate setting for their epic game. "We're trapped inside a bubble," Danny shouted, zooming around on his scooter. "This is like a video game level." Without hesitation, the kids got back to work. Charlie grabbed a toy drone from his backpack and sent it buzzing toward the edge of the containment field. The drone's signal caused the energy barrier to flicker and distort, much to the surprise of the Zorvian soldiers. What is that?" one of the Zorvians stammered, watching the drone disrupt their field with its buzzing, toy-like movements. "It's interfering with the containment," another alien reported in disbelief. From behind the barricade of cardboard boxes, Charlie grinned. "All right, guys, we need more of that. Danny, get your remote-controlled car. Sarah, get the water balloons. We're gonna take this shield down. The kids moved with the precision of a squadron of seasoned soldiers, albeit much louder and much messier. Danny sent his remote-controlled car zooming toward the force field, while Sarah and the others launched water balloons in arcs toward the aliens. The Zorvians were baffled. They tried to fire their weapons, but their systems were overloaded with interference from the toys, and the water balloons short-circuited their cloaking devices. One of the Zorvian soldiers stumbled backward, tangled in a jump rope that had been set as a trap, falling flat onto the ground. Vrask's frustration had reached a boiling point. How are they doing this? He roared, his fists clenched. These children are defeating us with their toys. One of his subordinates, still dripping from the water balloon assault, looked equally bewildered. Commander, they're using their primitive objects in ways we can't predict. Their tactics are illogical, chaotic. Vrask slammed his fist onto the console. Then we need to stop treating this like a military operation. These humans, these children, aren't following any rational strategy. He turned to his team, his eyes blazing with determination. We'll trap them, overpower them with force, and end this madness before it gets any worse. But as Vrask gave the order, a loud cheer erupted from the playground. The children had managed to disrupt the containment field, causing it to flicker and vanish. Their toys, their laughter, and their sheer joy were dismantling the Zorvians' plans with every passing second. Commander Vrask stood on the edge of the playground, watching the chaos unfold before him with growing disbelief. His soldiers, highly trained, battle-hardened warriors from one of the most feared species in the galaxy, were scrambling across the playground, utterly outmatched by a group of Earth children armed with nothing more than toys and their wild imaginations. This can't be happening, Vrask muttered under his breath, his clawed fingers gripping the edge of his command console. One of his soldiers stumbled back to him, his armor still dripping with water from a recent encounter with the kids' water balloons. Commander, their attacks, though primitive, are completely disorienting us. They don't follow any recognizable pattern. Vrask scowled, his mandibles clicking in frustration. Of course they don't. They're children. They don't even realize they're fighting. He looked back at the playground, where the kids were already rallying for another round of battle. Charlie, Sarah, and the others were setting up more traps, this time using anything they could find. From jump ropes to frisbees to toy trucks, they were turning the playground into a fortress. I refuse to be outsmarted by children, Vrask growled. Prepare the containment devices again. This time, double the field's power. We'll trap them inside and we'll end this foolishness once and for all. The Zorvian soldiers, still frazzled and confused by the children's antics, nodded and scrambled to set up the containment devices. Vrask's plan was simple: trap the kids and overwhelm them with superior numbers and firepower. But as always, the kids had other ideas. Charlie, standing proudly on top of the jungle gym, surveyed the scene like a commander in charge of a grand battle. All right, team, we've got them on the run, but they're coming back for more. We need to build better defenses. Sarah, armed with a plastic baseball bat, grinned up at him. You mean we're gonna win this level? Charlie nodded, brandishing his water gun like a general. You bet we are. Danny, get your remote-controlled car ready. We're gonna need it to take out that energy shield. The kids moved quickly, working together with the kind of creativity and coordination only children possessed. Danny zoomed around on his scooter, handing out supplies, sticks, cardboard boxes, and anything else they could use to build their defenses. Sarah and the others set up tripwires made of jump ropes, using the swing set as a makeshift watchtower. Meanwhile, in the center of the playground, a group of younger kids had started setting up a catapult made of old pool noodles and tree branches. They were loading it with water balloons and tennis balls, ready to launch their arsenal at the incoming aliens. This is the best game ever, Danny shouted as he sent his remote-controlled car zooming toward the shimmering energy shield the Zorvians were trying to activate again. The car hit the edge of the containment field, and just like before, the shield flickered and sparked, disrupted by the interference. The Zorvians, struggling to maintain control of the field, were thrown into even more confusion. Commander, they're disrupting the containment field again, one of the Zorvian soldiers reported, his voice strained with panic. Vrask slammed his fist on the console. How are they doing this? It's just a toy. Charlie and the others had noticed the effect the remote-controlled car had on the force field, and they weren't going to let the opportunity slip away. Keep hitting it, Charlie shouted, pumping his fist in the air. We can take it down! The kids launched another wave of attacks, this time using everything they had: frisbees, water balloons, foam darts from their Nerf guns. The playground had turned into a battlefield of pure chaos, with laughter, shouting, and the occasional squeal of delight filling the air. One Zorvian soldier, his cloaking device malfunctioning, found himself tangled in a jump rope trap that Danny had set up between two trees. The soldier stumbled, falling flat on his back, much to the amusement of the nearby kids. "Gotcha!" Danny cheered, raising his hand for a high five. The Zorvian commander, watching the scene from a distance, felt his frustration boiling over. His soldiers, his technology, everything was being overwhelmed by the sheer unpredictability of these human children. The randomness, the creativity, the energy. It was something he and his species couldn't comprehend. "They're not even following any tactical pattern," Vrask muttered to himself. "It's pure chaos." "Commander, what do we do?" one of his officers asked, his voice quivering. Vrask's eyes narrowed. "If we can't predict their actions, then we'll overwhelm them with brute force." As the kids continued their game of alien defense, the Zorvian forces pulled back to regroup. This time, Vrask had had enough. He ordered the deployment of the Zorvians' most powerful technology, a towering mech suit designed to crush all opposition with sheer size and firepower. The mech suit, gleaming and menacing, lumbered toward the playground, its massive feet shaking the ground as it approached. The Zorvian commander, now seated in the control cockpit, grinned wickedly. "Let's see how they handle this," Vrask hissed, activating the mech's energy cannons. The kids, who were busy fortifying their positions with pillows and blankets, because even a fort needed some comfort, looked up in awe as the mech suit approached. Sarah's eyes widened. "Whoa, that thing's huge." Charlie, ever the fearless leader, didn't back down. "It's like the final boss fight," he declared, waving his water gun in the air. "Get ready, everyone." But while the Zorvians thought their mech suit would finally crush the children's resistance, they hadn't accounted for the one thing that always tipped the balance in humanity's favor: kid creativity. As the mech suit lumbered forward, firing warning shots into the air, Charlie rallied his friends. "Okay, guys, we're gonna need to get creative. We've got to use everything we've got." Danny, always quick on his feet, came up with the first idea. "How about we use the bubble guns? The bubbles could confuse its sensors." "Great idea." Charlie grinned. "Let's hit it with everything." The kids scrambled into action. One group grabbed their bubble guns and unleashed a storm of bubbles at the mech suit. The shiny orbs floated through the air, and to the Zorvians' shock, they began to interfere with the mech's sensors. The bubbles confused the targeting systems, causing the mech to fire wildly in all directions. What is happening?" Vrask shouted from inside the cockpit as his display screens filled with bubble-shaped interference. "Quick, the skipping rope!" Sarah shouted, pointing at a rope tied between two trees. With a well-timed pull, the kids yanked the skipping rope taut, catching one of the mech's legs and causing it to stumble. The ground shook as the massive machine struggled to regain balance. "We're doing it!" Danny yelled, pumping his fist in the air. Charlie grinned as he grabbed a slingshot. "Let's finish this." He loaded the slingshot with a tennis ball and aimed for the mech's cockpit. The Zorvian mech suit teetered dangerously. Sparks flying from the cockpit as the tennis ball lodged in the control panel wreaked havoc on its systems. Inside, Commander Vrask desperately tried to regain control, his multiple hands frantically working the malfunctioning controls. "Stabilize it!" Vrask snarled at his engineers over the comms, his eyes wide with panic, but it was no use. The mech's sensors were overloaded, its targeting systems blinded by the endless stream of bubbles floating up from the children's bubble guns. The machine swayed from side to side, unsteady and uncoordinated, and its energy cannons fired wildly into the air, completely missing their targets. On the ground, the children were in full celebration mode. They had successfully disoriented the massive mech, and now they were pushing forward with everything they had. "This is so epic," Danny yelled, zooming around on his scooter, weaving between the fallen Zorvian soldiers who were still recovering from their various humiliations. "We've totally got this." Charlie, standing tall atop the jungle gym like a general commanding his troops, grinned ear to ear. "All right, team. Keep hitting it. We've almost won this battle." Sarah, armed with a slingshot, fired off a volley of water balloons, each one striking the mech's exterior with a satisfying splat. The water dripped down its metallic legs, and the mech lurched again, almost slipping on the mud the kids had created earlier with their water games. But the mech wasn't done yet. Vrask's eyes were wild with rage. His high-tech war machine, the pride of the Zorvian military, was being brought low by a bunch of human children. The humiliation was unbearable. "Reboot the systems," Vrask growled into his comms. "Activate emergency power. I'll crush them myself if I have to." The Zorvian engineers worked quickly, reactivating the emergency power systems. The mech shuddered for a moment, then stabilized. Its targeting systems came back online, the bubbles from the children's bubble guns no longer interfering. Vrask grinned wickedly. Now, let's end this. The kids paused for a moment as the mech suit stopped swaying and suddenly straightened up, its cannons now glowing ominously as they recharged. Uh-oh, Sarah muttered, lowering her slingshot. I think it's getting serious now. Charlie's eyes narrowed. Don't worry, we can still beat it. We just need to hit it with something bigger. The children looked around, thinking of what else they could use. Then, one of the younger kids, a quiet boy named Max, stepped forward holding an oversized bright red fire extinguisher. We could use this, he said shyly. Charlie's eyes lit up. Perfect. The kids quickly formulated a plan. While the mech was powering up for its next attack, they would use the fire extinguisher to blind it, just like they had with the bubbles. But this time, they'd get close enough to take it down for good. Max, you're on fire extinguisher duty, Charlie said, nodding toward the giant mech. We'll distract it so you can get in close. Max nodded bravely, clutching the fire extinguisher tightly in his small hands. As the mech powered up its weapons, the kids sprang into action. Danny zoomed around on his scooter again, drawing the mech's attention as it tried to lock onto him with its targeting systems. Sarah and the others kept launching water balloons and tennis balls, keeping the machine distracted and off balance. Meanwhile, Max crept forward, the fire extinguisher clutched to his chest. His heart was pounding in his ears, but he knew he had to do this. The fate of the playground, and as far as he knew the entire world, rested on his small shoulders. The mech's cannons roared to life, firing a volley of energy blasts into the air, but the kids dodged them with ease, laughing as they rolled and ducked behind their makeshift fortresses. Come on, Charlie muttered under his breath, watching Max's slow but steady approach. You've got this, buddy. Max reached the base of the mech, his small figure dwarfed by its massive armored legs. He looked up, gulping nervously as the giant machine loomed over him. Then, with a deep breath, Max pulled the pin on the fire extinguisher and aimed the nozzle upward. With a loud whoosh, a thick cloud of foam exploded from the extinguisher, covering the mech's legs and quickly spreading upward. The foam clogged its joints, coated its sensors, and blinded its targeting systems once again. Inside the cockpit, Vrask screamed in frustration. No, not again! The children cheered as the mech stumbled, its legs slipping in the foam and mud. It swayed dangerously, its cannons firing wildly into the air. The machine, once an imposing symbol of the Zorian military's might, now looked like a flailing giant trying to keep its balance on a slippery floor. Hit it now! Charlie shouted. Danny, Sarah, and the others launched their final wave of attacks. Frisbees, dodgeballs, water balloons, anything they had left. The projectiles hit the mech from all sides, and finally, with one last groan of metal, the massive machine toppled over. The ground shook as the mech crashed into the playground, its systems sparking and sputtering as it lay in a heap. Inside, Commander Vrask was thrown against the cockpit walls, dazed and defeated. We did it! Danny shouted, pumping his fist in the air. The kids erupted in cheers, high-fiving each other and dancing around the fallen mech like they had just won the greatest game in the world. Charlie, standing proudly atop the jungle gym, raised his water gun in triumph. Victory! The remaining Zorian soldiers stood in stunned silence, watching in disbelief as their once mighty mech was reduced to a pile of scrap by a group of Earth children. Their commander, Vrask, was defeated, and their invasion plan was in ruins. Commander Vrask has fallen, one of the soldiers whispered, his voice filled with shock. We need to retreat, another stammered. These humans they're too unpredictable. The Zorian forces, utterly humiliated, began to pull back. They activated their cloaking devices once more and slunk away, leaving the children victorious on the battlefield that had once been a simple playground. Just as the kids began to celebrate, the air crackled with energy. The fallen Zorian mech, though inactive, had triggered a final communication signal, a distress beacon that was now broadcasting to the entire Zorian fleet in orbit. Charlie noticed the strange, glowing device buried in the wreckage of the mech. Guys, I think they're calling for backup." The kids gathered around, their eyes widening as the realization hit them. They had won the battle, but the war wasn't over. The entire Zorian fleet was now aware of their defeat, and reinforcements were surely on their way. Charlie's grin faded as he looked up at the sky, where dozens of Zorian ships were descending through the clouds, casting dark shadows over the playground. The rumble of the alien engines filled the air, and the atmosphere suddenly shifted from a fun adventure to something much more serious. Guys," Sarah muttered, lowering her slingshot as she stared at the incoming fleet. "I think this just got a whole lot bigger." The kids, who had been celebrating their victory over the fallen mech suit, now stood frozen in awe and fear. The playground seemed impossibly small under the looming shadow of the alien ships. The Zorvians weren't playing around anymore. They're coming back. With more, Danny said, his voice barely above a whisper. He clutched his remote-controlled car nervously, realizing that this next wave wouldn't be so easy to defeat. Charlie, ever the leader, took a deep breath and raised his water gun. All right, listen up, this is it. We stopped them once and we can do it again. We've got the advantage. They don't know how unpredictable we are, but we're just kids, Max, still holding the now empty fire extinguisher, said, his voice trembling. How can we fight all of that? He gestured to the massive Zorvian fleet now forming an ominous ring in the sky. Charlie clenched his fists. We can't do it alone, but we don't have to. Back at the Zorvian command center, Commander Vrask, still recovering from the disastrous defeat on the playground, snarled as the fleet above received his distress signal. He had been humiliated by Earth's children, and he wasn't about to let that stain his reputation. The children have won this round, Vrask growled into his comms, but Earth won't survive the next wave. Prepare for a full invasion. We'll crush them with overwhelming force. The Zorvian fleet began to power up their weapons, preparing to strike from orbit. Vrask, watching from the wreckage of his fallen mech, grinned as he imagined Earth's playgrounds and cities burning under the might of his forces. But he had underestimated the children once again. As the Zorvian ships began to descend lower, preparing their attack, Charlie's mind raced. He knew they couldn't stop the entire fleet with toys and tricks. Not this time. They needed something bigger, something that could buy them time. And then, like a light bulb switching on, Charlie had an idea. We need to hack into their systems, Charlie said suddenly, turning to his friends. Danny blinked. Hack into an alien fleet? Dude, we're good at video games, but this is next level. Charlie shook his head. No. Remember what we did with the drone? Their tech gets confused by our signals. If we can disrupt their communications, we might be able to trick them. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Trick them how? Charlie's grin returned. We're going to make them think there's a bigger threat than us. Something even they can't handle. The kids sprang into action, gathering all the toys and gadgets they had left. They connected drones, remote-controlled cars, and toy walkie-talkies, creating a makeshift communication device. Charlie, who had always been a whiz with electronics, tinkered with the alien tech they had scavenged from the fallen mech. We're going to send out a fake distress signal, Charlie explained, his fingers flying over the controls. We'll make it look like Earth has a secret weapon, something the Zorvians can't fight. Danny, skeptical but intrigued, helped connect the wires. And they're just gonna believe us? Charlie nodded. They don't understand how we think. They've been underestimating us this whole time. If we make it look convincing enough, they'll retreat. Max, watching in awe, asked, but what kind of weapon are we pretending we have? Charlie paused, then grinned. Something big enough to scare even them. How about a giant world-ending robot? The kids laughed nervously, but Charlie's confidence was infectious. They set to work, sending out the fake signal. The device buzzed to life, and the alien tech hummed as it began transmitting the fabricated message. Vrask was on the verge of giving the order to fire when suddenly, his console lit up with a new alert. A strange signal was being transmitted from Earth, one that wasn't coming from any human military channel. What is this? Vrask muttered, tapping into the transmission. The message played over the Zorvian comms, broadcasting a garbled but unmistakably urgent warning. Warning, Earth's ultimate defense system activated. Planetary destruction imminent. Deploy all forces or face annihilation. Vrask's eyes widened as the message continued to repeat, detailing the activation of a supposed world-ending robot designed to destroy any alien threat that came too close. The transmission even included images, doctored by the kids using footage of their toy robot collection, showing massive mechs towering over Earth's cities. This can't be real, Vrask muttered, his confidence wavering. Earth doesn't have this kind of technology. One of his officers, equally rattled, said, Commander, the signal is coming from the surface. Their military hasn't responded. This could be something new. Vrask hesitated. The Zorvian fleet was powerful, but if Earth really did have some secret weapon, then invading could mean disaster. The Zorvians had already suffered enough humiliation. Could they afford to risk everything on a full-scale invasion now? Charlie and the others watched nervously as the Zorvian ships hovered above, their engines humming with potential destruction. Do you think they're buying it? Sarah whispered. Charlie bit his lip, his fingers still crossed over the controls. I don't know, but if they don't, we're going to have to come up with a plan B. Fast. Just then, one of the Zorvian ships began to pull back, rising higher into the atmosphere. Then another and another. The fleet, seemingly spooked by the fake signal, began to retreat. "It's working!" Danny shouted, jumping up and down. "They're leaving!" The kids erupted into cheers as one by one, the Zorvian ships disappeared into the clouds, their engines roaring as they fled Earth's atmosphere. Vrask, now thoroughly shaken by the possibility of Earth's ultimate weapon, growled in frustration as he watched his fleet retreat. The thought of losing to Earth's children was unbearable, but the risk was too great. If the signal was real, the Zorvians could face total destruction. "Retreat," Vrask ordered, his voice filled with bitterness. "We'll regroup and return when we know more about this supposed weapon." As the Zorvian fleet vanished into space, Vrask clenched his fists, seething with anger. "This isn't over, humans, but next time, I'll be ready." Back on Earth, the playground was quiet once more. The Zorvian ships were gone, and the children stood victorious, grinning from ear to ear. They had done it. Not only had they fought off an alien invasion, but they had outsmarted one of the most advanced species in the galaxy, all with their toys, their creativity, and their teamwork. "That was awesome!" Danny yelled, throwing his arms around his friends in celebration. Sarah laughed, still clutching her slingshot. "We totally beat them." Charlie, exhausted but proud, smiled at his friends. "Told you we could do it." As the sun began to set, the kids started gathering their toys, chatting excitedly about the day's events as if they had just finished the world's best game of make-believe. "Do you think they'll come back?" Max asked quietly, looking up at the sky. Charlie thought for a moment, then shrugged. "Maybe, but if they do, we'll be ready." As the kids walked home, laughing and talking about their next big adventure, the camera pans up to the sky, where the last traces of the Zorvian fleet have vanished into the stars. Earth was safe, for now, thanks to the ingenuity, creativity, and innocence of its youngest defenders.